That's it? You say stuff.
That's it.
No.
No.
Every time we say stuff.
What do you want to say?
Take on Cloudmonster 2, take 1.
All right, so we're talking about one of the most popular style shoes that is now making some pretty nice running shoes from Switzerland, designed in Switzerland, On. And I think they're dropping the running because they also have tennis now and other sports, so On.
They got the Instagram handle ON. @ON. Like, they nailed that.
How much do you think that costs?
Something.
Like a 2-letter Instagram handle?
Yeah.
It's pretty nice. All right, so let's get into the shoe. The previous model we liked a lot. It was one of the first On running shoes that we were like, okay, they've kind of taken the Speedboard away from the foot, softened up some of the Helion foam on it, and it made it a really nice shoe. We both liked it. Robbie liked it. As a matter of fact, you didn't have an opinion on it, did you?
No, because I didn't have the shoe.
Yeah, so Robbie and I both liked it quite a bit. Our big complaint was the upper wasn't very structured, so that it wasn't giving you that great fit that you want in a running shoe. Without a spoiler, they've updated the upper, but is it better? We'll find out in a second here, especially when we're talking about the difference between our 2 feet.
All right, well, let's get into it. So, first of all, aesthetics-wise, I mean, On's nailing it per usual. This looks amazing. The upper is just a nice mesh here. You've got a gusted tongue. It's very thin, very minimal. The laces are pretty simple. They lock the foot down just fine. But it's really I think what Thomas is struggling with here is the width of this shoe and just how much room there is in the forefoot, which as someone with a wider foot, I absolutely love. However, I will say I think it runs about a half size too large. So while there is a ton of room in here for your toes to splay, maybe a little bit too much.
Yeah, this upper, I was really hoping that the upper was going to be a big update on this shoe because I really like the way that the midsole had a great sensation underfoot in the previous model. But with the baggy upper, I couldn't really get a good tight lockdown. And while this has a new mesh upper that looks a little bit more traditional like a running shoe, there's not those forms that are in here, those overlays or underlays or taping or anything that kind of lock your foot in really nice. So for me, with a narrow foot, I really had to cinch this up as tight as I could. And even when I did that, there was still room for my foot to slide around. There's definitely room in the toe box. I also had a little bit of slipping and extra room in the collar of the shoe and the heel counter. It runs about a half size too big. That could play into the baggy, oversized feeling that I'm getting in the shoe, but I will say that was a little bit of a disappointment for me that there wasn't maybe just a little bit more structure. If you look at the Eclipse has a nice fitting upper. I felt like they did a nice job. Wasn't perfect. They're still run a little bit more on the roomy side than the narrow side, but this one definitely I really would have liked to have a little more structure in the upper to lock that foot down.
And I do wonder if it would have been a very different experience if we did have that half size down where there isn't quite so much room for your foot to move around. So TBD on that one, but definitely go a half size down if you are going to get this one.
Yeah, and Robbie normally wears a 7.5. He's actually started going down to a 7 in his running shoes. They sent him a 7.5 and he felt like it was almost a full size too big. He had so much room in it that he wasn't able to run it and actually passed it off to one of our writers that does some of the written reviews. So we'll get that opinion from him. But for me, I think a half size down would make a difference. But let's move down to the midsole, Meg.
All right, so this is where another big update comes into play here. So you've got the Helion foam, which we're all used to from On, and that's primarily throughout the shoe. But then in the forefoot here, you'll see it's a new layer of this compressed Helion foam. And so what that does is it gives it a little bit more of a snappy ride. It also feels a little smidge softer on step-in, I think, than the original Monster, which I did put on my feet. I just didn't run in it. But what do you think?
Overall, I don't know if we're getting spoiled by a lot of soft foams. This has a firmer feel. This certainly feels firmer than the Eclipse. So if you're looking for something that isn't mushy, that still has a nice bit of give, nice bit of cushion, but is gonna feel a little firmer underfoot, this really delivers.
Yeah, so the On Cloud Eclipse, which we loved, is definitely going to be the softer version of a shoe like this. This has that traditional Speedboard that you know from On. It is a nylon plate in there. It has been reworked a little bit in this one versus the original to give you a little bit more of that poppy ride, but it is going to be a firmer ride when you're comparing it to something like the On Cloud Eclipse, where it's just really had a shank in the center of it rather than the full Speedboard.
Yeah. With the dual density, I'm getting a different feel under the foot, especially under the front of the foot. It does have a nice roll through it. I don't know, I wouldn't call this a rocker, but it does have a really nice transition from heel to toe.
Yeah, when we were talking about this shoe earlier, I've been lacing it up for a lot of my runs. I feel like it's a shoe that I like and I'm gravitating towards, and it was hard for me to explain why, because there isn't any significant sensation underfoot. You don't feel like this crazy pop from a plate, or
you're not getting
the
this
foam
like crazy reaction from the
but it just
Cloud Tech.
I think it feels good, and it's slightly firmer than I think some of the softer shoes I've been running in, and maybe that's a nice change up. But yeah, it's just a generally like a nice ride.
All right, and today I did my miles. It was snowing / raining, and I was a little nervous because we run over all types of surfaces, including wood decking, which is normally, if I'm going to slip, that's where it's going to be. This rubber on the outsole seemed to do fine. I didn't have any slipping. There is some exposed areas of the foam with the Helion here, but overall traction was pretty good. What do you think?
Yeah, I had no issues with traction. I was also out there running this morning in the snow and rain, which was super fun. But yeah, I think you'll be pretty good with this, and I feel like it's definitely going to get some miles out of it. I already have over 30 miles on this shoe, and you can't even see anywhere on the bottom here.
Yeah, we didn't go over the drop. The drop is 6 millimeters from heel to toe, so nothing. It's not extreme in either direction. It's not low drop. It's not high drop. It's right there in the middle. So that's pretty much the shoe. We didn't get into the weight.
Yeah, so it's definitely. I mean, look at it. It's a monster. So it's a little bit on the heavier side. We weighed mine, but it's wet from the run this morning, and it was like 8.8 ounces for my women's 7.5. According to the spec sheet, a women's size 7 comes in at 8.1 ounces. So I'm thinking my 7.5 is somewhere in between those two.
Mine's a little wet too, so I'm not going to give you the exact number, but it's over 11 for this one. Their spec sheet says a men's basically 8.5 weighs 300 grams or 10.6 ounces. So you can guess that a 10.5 is definitely going to be over 11 ounces, which is pretty heavy. I mean,
But like, I didn't really notice it out on the run. It wasn't a shoe that I laced up that I was like, man, this feels heavy. Maybe just because I wasn't expecting to run fast in this shoe. I was just expecting some easy miles. And so for that, it didn't really bother me.
Yeah, I did notice the weight. It did feel a little bit more, and it might have been the fit of the upper giving me more of a clunky feeling. When clunky is a little bit harsh, it's not like terrible, but I did notice the weight. I was like waiting to get it on the scale till we did the review, because sometimes when I notice a shoe's a little heavy, I want to see if it's going to feel lighter if I don't have it in my head what the actual weight is. But this one, it is heavier. Now it retails for $180, right, Meg?
Yep. So this is going to be available, we believe, don't quote me if it doesn't happen, but February 22nd, $180. So right in line with a lot of the super trainers we've been talking about.
That's where I think there's a problem.
Yeah. What's
so at $180, you're putting it up there with shoes like the Endorphin Speed 4. You're putting it up there, which has a plate.
But look
and
how
foam.
good you look at it.
Okay, so if you're just going for fast, but you're going up against some heavy hitters. That puts you up against stuff like the Boston 12, puts you up, you're getting close to the Super Blast price. There's a lot of what we call super trainers in that 180 price point that this one I think is a really solid daily trainer, but I don't know that it elevates to the same performance level as some of those other ones. But if you're just going for style and looks and you want a comfortable shoe for your miles, this one will handle that.
All right, so what are you giving this?
Meg, I'm giving it a yellow. And it's a tough one because I really do like the shoe. The Monster was the first one that brought me back into it, but without them really doing a nice update on the upper that really fixes some of the issues I had with the original one, and this weight, I can't give it a green. I can't give it a big thumbs up. It's It's a good daily trainer. I don't know that this would be something that once we finish this review that I'm going to be like, oh, excited to put back on. I think I'll move on to other offerings like the Eclipse.
See, I think that's where we differ here is even after the review, I have a feeling I'm going to be lacing this one up. I think that's partially because of the fit of the upper wasn't as bad for me as it was for you because of my wider foot.
So what are you giving it?
I would give it a green because I think if this came in my correct size, it was a half size down, I would be ecstatic over this and much higher praises than maybe we're giving today.
All right, so maybe I have to put a caveat on my yellow and say, maybe you could edge up to light green if the sizing was a little bit on. But between the sizing, the weight, and the fit, it's got to stay yellow for me. I can appreciate your green. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
All right, Meg, so we're going to have this written up on the website. You can check it out at believeintherun.com. Of course, the best way to stay in touch with us is our email. And if you like this video, what should you do?
You should definitely like it, subscribe to this channel. And if you haven't yet, go check us out. We have 2 podcasts, The Drop, which comes out every Friday and Monday, and Fuel for the Soul with sports dietitian Meaghan Featherston, which comes out every other Tuesday.
Yeah, and of course, we're on Instagram, all the other places that you want to find us. And check it out. And I'd love to hear your opinion of the shoe. If you got it and you have been wearing it, I'd love to find out what you think of the fit. I do think it's going to change a little bit if you have a wider foot like Meaghan, that you may like this shoe better. But until next time, leave it in the comments.